Okay, because my pages are messed up in the book, I kind of got stopped in the middle of trying to examine the Bootstrap media queries. So I'm going to start over kind of. I will walk through to where I left off and then continue on in the book where it actually continues. I have pages that are out of order is the problem. Okay, let's start on page 312, examining Bootstrap media queries. Because a Bootstrap page defines four layouts in one HTML page, the technology requires various selectors and media queries to control the elements of various display sizes. In this exercise, we are going to examine the elements that make the basic website work. So the first thing that you need to do is click on Bootstrap components at the top because we're going to be working in there. Okay, make sure that you are on the 1200 pixel size. Okay, click inside the document window and then go up and click the very first one, which is the container button in the Bootstrap components, inserting the container into the panel. And this is a regular container, which means it has size restrictions. If you look and have App Media open on the right hand side, you'll see max width of 578, so on and so forth. That's the container size. I also want you to scroll down in the selectors until you can see all 5 containers, because that's what we are going to talk about next. Okay, I am now currently on the correct page. The next thing that it says to do is split it so you can review the code. What you need to see is up here we have a new div tag class called, which it put in container for us, and then of course the closing div tag. Now let's make sure CSS Designer is open, and we are need to be on the current tab. Okay, and then while we are on the current tab, we want to make sure that you have show set options checked. So make sure that is checked, and if necessary, click the new div element. So if you need to, go over here and just select the new div element to where you can see the blue around it. And in the CSS Designer, what we want to do is click the very last container item to view. As you can see, 5 container classes apply the div element that's all selected in the document window. CSS follows the same top-down order that they do anytime we design CSS, which means later rule will override earlier rules. So just be aware of that. In the image that you're looking at here, you can see the last container selector is active, and in the App Media section, if you do not have the App Media section open, please open it to where you can see what's there, and you'll notice that the word global is in bold, which means that the selector does not exist within a specific media query. The defined property apply regardless of which display size is active. This selector defines automatic left and right margins, as well as a 15 pixel padding on the left. Okay, and it is grayed out, and the reason it is grayed out is because it resides within the Bootstrap only, read only at the top. Okay, so there's nothing that we are allowed to change in that. Now let's click the 4th container one, and in this one, this is the minimum width of 576. Okay, so that's what this one should show us if it's not going to allow us to see it. So this selector, okay, oh, it shows up here. Look at the bold underneath media, and you can see it's the only thing that it does is the minimum width of 576. If I click the 3rd one, I will see a minimum width of 768. And if I click the next one, okay, I'll see the 992 and the first one, which is the 1200. So this is all the media queries that determine the actual size of the web page. Once we have done all of that, let's do a file and save all to save our work. Okay, if you have not saved, make sure you save. So do a Control S to save. Okay, we are now on page 315 to find a Bootstrap page layout. As we explained at the beginning of this project, Bootstrap works based on underlying page grid, otherwise all those columns, all 12 of them, which divide the page into 12 equal columns. In this exercise, we're going to define the row and column elements to contain the page content. The size of the column elements will be based on the underlying page grid. So with the index open, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the third purple bar, which is the 992. So click in 992. Okay, while on the 992, we're going to make sure that we are selected on the div container. And then we're going to go up and choose the third, in Bootstrap components, we're going to choose the third one, grid row with column. And when the dialog box comes up, what we want to do is choose the nest option. So make sure that is selected. And then we want to make it 2 columns. So we're going to type 2 in the column box. So with nest option selected, and 2 columns, we are going to click OK. And you will notice what happens is inside the container, we now have content goes here, a div row with content goes here and content goes here. Okay, and as its most basic, a responsive Bootstrap page is a series of rows and columns that define the page layout. One new element with a row class has just been added inside the container div that you created earlier. Because you define 2 columns in the dialog box, 2 div elements with column classics have also been added to the row element. In the document window, the new columns are visually identified by dashed lines. Okay, why am I not seeing dashed lines? Oh, I guess you can, well, you can sort of see it in between, but because it's inside the container, it's really difficult to see. And it also says if you are not seeing them, then go up to View and go up to View. We need to be in both. Okay, now we're, well, phooey. Hang on. Okay, if you have hide live view displays, you want to make sure it is not checked under View and live view options. Make sure hide live view displays is not checked. I'm going to go back into live view so you can see that I have them on both sides, and there is a dotted line. Again, it's a little difficult to tell due to the fact that it's inside of the container. Okay, it also talks about in Dreamweaver what is visible when your document is determined by the size. Now keep in mind the maximum that you can have in one row is the 12 columns. So each one of these is holding technically the 6 columns. Now if we go down and we click the 576, what's going to happen is they're going to pop one on top of each other. in the extra small layout. So when you change the display size of the document window, you can see the effect of how responsive design works. The two column elements in the row appear on top of each other now, and each column spans the entire document width. Remember that Bootstrap follows the mobile first approach. So because of that, it means that the design begins with the smallest display size. When you create a new row with multiple columns, each column defaults to extend across the entire underlying grid for the extra small size. The setting persists until or unless it is overridden by a different layout size. Because the column element classes define a specific column width for only a large display size, the setting does not apply to extra small, so therefore this is what you get instead. Okay, let's click the minimum width of the 1200. So we'll go up here and click that, and it puts it back to show the extra large layout. In the extra large display size, the column elements again adapt only to occupy 6 columns in the underlying grid page. Similar to the way CSS follows a top-down approach, Bootstrap follows the smaller to largest methodology, so column settings apply unless or until they're overridden by a different setting of a different size. And because this is the biggest size, once again, both columns are now back in the same row. Now let's click on the 992 again to make the large size active, and with the existing row div selected, and how we can make sure we are selected on that is you can click on row, you can click on div at the bottom, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go up and we're going to add another column grid row with column button. So we'll click on that again. This time we are going to choose after, and we are going to set it to 3 columns. So in the insert row with columns, we have chosen after, we have chosen 3. Once we have done both of those, we're going to click OK. Now what you will see is we now have a new div row that contains 3 different columns. And now what we're going to do is include one more. So we're going to go back up, and since we're already selected on that, and click it one more time. This one is also going to be after. So click after, and we're going to put 1 column in there. So it's going to go all the way across for this one. Once I have the after selected and 1 column across the whole row, I am going to click OK. And it created a 3rd one for us up there. With the large layout visible in the document window, click to select the left column on the first row. So we're going to go up here and click the left column on the first row. Now remember what I said earlier in the introduction about insets, how we can actually move these in and create a really cool balance? Well, that's what we are going to do next, is we're going to create some offsets, and that's done by clicking in the box or in the div box that you want, and going over to the left hand side, and we're going to drag this left until it says offset 1 and let go. Now I want you to notice what just happened to the second column that we had up in the same area. It dropped down. The reason it dropped down is we just added another column to this. This is 6 columns wide plus 1, and this is 6 columns, which means we're at 13 columns right now, and that doesn't work. So what we have to do is we have to go back up here, and this time we're going to go on the right hand side, and by pulling left, what it's going to do is it's going to drop the columns down from 6 to 5. So I'm going to hold down my mouse, drag left until it says 5 columns right here, okay, which brought this one back up for us. So that's how we can give it an offset. Okay, and in order to bring it back into the 12 columns maximum for our row, I just drug it back to the left until it says column large 5, and now it's worked quite well to be where we want. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to balance out that row. And what I'm going to do to balance out that row is I'm going to click excuse me, in the resize, or in the second one, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this one left one like so to create the same look on this side where I have a blank here and a blank here and then content on each side so everything matches. Once I have resized that one to 5 columns as well, I'm going to do a Control S. Well, actually I probably should go up just to be on the safe side on the index and do a Save All. And then that will complete this portion of the lesson.